Hello, folks. So I have taken a couple weeks break and now I'm back on this project. Um, let's start by catching up where we left off. We've so far been working on the Context Bonsai plugin for OpenCode. Context Bonsai lets the LLM during a coding session look at its history and realize there are things that have happened in the history that it no longer cares about, or things that just shouldn't be there in the first place. And it can run a prune command to chop parts of its context out of its history so that it's no longer consuming tokens. And this allows the context window to be more tight and focused on what it actually needs to do a task. And it also lets it run for longer periods of time because there's a limited amount of context that you can have that the LLM still operates in. So by continuously pulling things out of the context, it's able to continue moving along for a longer period of time and still getting useful stuff done. So while we're developing that, we've also been using the plugin actively on side projects to make sure that the plugin is working the way we want it to do, make sure the plugin has the kind of benefits that we're expecting out of it. And so far it has, but we're still continuing to do both of these things. We're narrowing up on the final path for the plugin of simplifying the code as much as possible, having it rebase the code on the latest versions of the upstream of OpenCode, and generally putting together sort of documentation about how the plugin works and how to use it. So let's go get started here. All right. And also a refresher, we have several desktops open, and on these different desktops we have different projects, and I will have a window down in the corner here that tells us what we're working on in this window. So this is the Context Bonsai window where we're both working on the plugin itself and the OpenCode code base itself. Now, for the code base, what we're going to need is something that can routinely take our changes and rebase them on the latest version of the upstream OpenCode. We've done this in the past a couple of times, and now the latest version worked pretty well. The latest plan that we did to extract just the commits that we need and replay them on the latest OpenCode, it went well. There were a few hiccups. So I've talked to the LLM about getting ready to produce sort of a meta plan for how can it go through the normal planning process and get all of the specific plans it needs for any current new version of OpenCode that runs out, and then execute that plan. So I've been chatting with the LLM about how to do that, and it says it's ready to create that meta plan. So I'll actually go ahead and kick that off now because it's going to take it a while. Use planning guidance.md as your oops, let's see there. Make sure it's not on the plan so it can actually write files. There we go. As your reference, reference for how to create the plan. Follow every step in that doc. Okay. So that's going to be off creating the plan for sort of a generic way of how to get our changes rebased on the latest of OpenCode. Now for the plugin itself, I'm pretty sure we're just completely done for the moment with the plugin. Oh, actually off stream, I have been poking it all along a little bit in the last couple of weeks. I made one change that took another look at the calculation up here. So the OpenCode UI shows how many tokens are used currently and what percentage of the total that is. And these tokens seemed to disagree with the auto compaction, because there were a couple of times when we got a really large context and auto compaction triggered before we expected because we were low, somewhere around 60% or something reported here, but the auto compaction ran anyway. And I want to make sure that we didn't mess anything up with the calculation in any of our changes. And I also want to make sure that Our plugin code has the right information it needs to understand how much of the context is used, because a big part of what we're doing is getting the LLM to manage its own context. And to be able to do that effectively, it needs to know if it's about to hit a wall on the context window size so that it can take preemptive action before the auto compact activity happens, because auto compact is not really good at preserving things that actually do need to be preserved to continue the work going forward. It summarizes the entire conversation down into a small summary, and usually it's pretty destructive, and it's very difficult to continue in a productive way from there. You're usually just better starting a fresh new session and getting it to read relevant things from scratch. So we want to make sure the prune code is calculating this and injecting the right utilization into the little hint that it sends. So every time this conversation is sent to the LLM, there's a little bit of the conversation that's ephemeral that tells the LLM how much of the context is used. So I did go through that and I figured out what was happening. The usage calculation is a little bit more complicated than simply one number. There are input tokens and output tokens, and they're calculated differently. And there's sort of a different limit for how many input tokens can happen versus how many output tokens can happen per model. So this UI display here is showing one thing. The auto compaction calculation is calculating something else, and my own plugin was calculating something else. So now I've updated the plugin so that it calculates the same way that the auto compaction calculates. It is now taking it does now understand that there's a difference between input tokens and output tokens, although I need to refresh my own memory on the final decisions we made. So we probably will be reviewing whatever I did here, because this is kind of old. I don't remember when I did it, but it was at least a week ago. Okay, our LLM thinks it has finished the plan, but it looks like it didn't actually follow the instructions that I gave it. Oh, it did. It's validating, doing stuff. Oh, it's still in plan mode for some reason. I could have swore I took it out of plan mode. Okay, so now I'm telling it it's no longer in plan mode. Write the plan file and redo the validation, because when the LLM transcribes things or writes down, commits things to actual files, it can be different because it has to sort of repeat things that it already said in its history, and that repeating mode is not deterministic. It might make slight variations versus what it previously presented. So even though it has this full plan here that it has presented to us, that's sort of in its memory, it's in its context. And when it tries to write it to the file, it may make some modifications that are undesirable. And additionally, whenever it launched subagents and it asked the subagent to critique the plan, every time it told the subagent that plan, because it couldn't point the subagent to a file, it had to repeat that plan when it told it to the subagents, and each one of those may be incorrect. So we need it to actually write the plan to a file, which it has done now. And now the subagents, when they're reviewing it, are looking at the file rather than looking at a repeat statement that the LLM had to emit. So now the file is a hard, concrete thing that I'm sure all the agents are looking at the same content when they're looking at it. And when the LLM makes updates to the file, they should be incremental, and we can actually see what changes were made and see the final result before it commits it. So I'm having it do that now. Okay, so that's what's happening on the OpenCode and Context Bonsai side. Now here's the image to maze project, which is one where we're just trying to sort of vibe code stuff but we're using the Context Bonsai plugin along the way so that we can sort of have a very long running session and just use the LLM agent continuously without thought of when we need to restart the session or close down a session and launch a new one. And it's been working really well. I think the last thing that we did here was we talked about creating a UI so that we can change the parameters of the maze. So overall, here's what we're doing. We have created a CLI so that we can feed it an image, and the CLI has to create a maze based on that image, and theoretically the maze should look like what the image looks like. However, every image is different, and it's hard to have a single set of values that are going to reliably create a map that looks like the image. And even at the beginning, this kind of is the shape of a banana, but it doesn't really look like a banana. If you see this image, this maze, you can't immediately tell that that's a banana. And my goal is actually to have the maze immediately look like the thing that you've created. So the idea is now we want to GUI so that we can fine tune all the parameters. When we feed in an image, we can adjust sort of the density of the various parts and whether the more dense areas are the light parts of the image, or if the high density areas are the dark parts of the image. We can sort of fool around with sliders to adjust for random values. So that's what's going on here. Oh, it looks like we ran into some problem before, but I don't remember anything about it. Here it looks like it's going through implementation something. Oh, yeah. We were having problems where we were giving it basic instructions that it had been doing fine all along. When I tell the LLM to orchestrate something, it already has context to understand. When I say orchestrate, that means read a certain file, and that file has instructions on how to orchestrate something. So yeah, I remember now that we were having trouble because they weren't really following instructions. Let's see. So yeah, it's creating some. Oh, it's going through the normal process of launching a developer, then a reviewer, then a judge. That is what it's supposed to do. Okay. Let's see. Now it claims that it has orchestrated it correctly. A caveat, bun-run lint has pre-existing repo-wide issues. This is doubtful. This is something LLMs will pretty much always say if you have it do a plan and it tries to execute tests and some tests fail for some reason, it's gotten really common that they just say those tests were already failing. They existed before what we were doing, so I'll just ignore it and continue. But it's almost always incorrect, especially with the way I do development, which is typically I don't start unless tests are clean and passing. And if they are clean and passing, then we start. And if they're not, then there was some problem. And when it says this, the first thing to do is to verify whether they were actually pre-existing. And the way to do that is to rewind the commit history till when it thinks was the pre-existing moment and try to run the tests and see if they pass or fail. And basically, it might have to do sort of a git bisect to find out which commit actually caused the failure, or maybe it can just understand by reading the test and seeing what changes happened. Oh, and actually, that's what I did. Launch a subagent to find out which commit the bun run lint broke. Before you do that, note the current commit ID. And I do that, note the current commit ID, because we may lose everything. So whenever you have an LLM agent messing with the Git history, it tends to do pretty dumb stuff and permanently lose work that it did. But if we have the commit ID that we're currently on, we can almost always get back to it unless it did really strange stuff of like cleaning up the repository, the Git repository internals. Usually, when you sort of change your commit history to do a different path of commits, that old commit does still exist. It's just not referenced in any tree. But if we have the commit ID, we can always get back to it if we have to. Okay, so it did launch the sub agent to go find when it regressed. First bad commit for the preview. Okay, it's got this from story 2. So it does look like its own orchestration did introduce the bug. It was incorrect about something being pre-existing. Bun run lint is scanning generated files in that directory, especially preview worker star.js, which triggers biome rules. Okay. Also found there was a pre-existing generated dist lint class earlier with first bad around that commit. Then some other one added new worker-specific failure class. So practically lint broke because generated build artifacts are being linted, and story 2 introduced extra generated worker artifacts that lint now flags. Okay. I'm going to take a moment to try and get the LLM to take a step out and realize what went wrong in this process, because I want to take a moment to review our orchestration instructions, because the orchestration system shouldn't really let this happen. There may have been earlier generated artifacts lint issues. The orchestration did introduce a new lint failure class, blah, blah, blah. So yes, the Epic introduced a real problem in your current workflow. The accurate statement is pre-existing issue class existed, and this orchestration added an additional lint breakage. Okay, we need the planning guidance to identify any pre-existing test failures. Review planning guidance.md and suggest what we might want to change to identify initial test failures. Okay, and I think the planning guidance is where we want to catch any pre-existing test failures, because then before we even finalize the plan, we can go create a whole new story just for fixing whatever the test failure is before we even start, and then come back to the plan and make sure that the plan still matches the current state. Like maybe our fix causes changes that need to happen in the plan, or maybe it doesn't. But however it is, during planning is when we want to catch it. And if we do or don't want to fix it, we either want to go ahead and fix it and update the plan, or update the plan to say exactly what tests are broken. And then we also want the developer, reviewer, and judge to understand that if there are any tests broken other than the specific ones identified, you broke them, you need to fix them. Okay. Yes, you can access that directory. Always. Confirm. Okay. So we'll come back to this. It's probably going to spin for a little while. Now we're back on the Context Bonsai thing in the OpenCode directory. What was the last thing that I told it to do? I already forgot. Ooh. Created a plan file, reran. Oh, right. It created a plan, but it didn't actually create the file. Now it has created the file and did some validation, and now the validation passes. So that's great. Before I run this, I want to lightly review this. I'm not going to pay super close attention to everything in it, um, unless it's very short. So this plan that we created is sort of a meta plan for anytime the upstream open code has more changes, we need to take our own context bonsai changes and replay them on top of the latest. So this is a plan for telling the LLM how to create a plan for doing that, because the plans that we like to create for our LLMs have to be as specific as possible. I want the specific commit IDs identified that it has to replay, and the plan should be sort of very precise and prescriptive. But in order to create that plan, that's what this meta plan has to figure out and do correctly. So the goal is create a reusable deterministic process for generating implementation-ready rebase plans for future upstream updates with safeguards against drift, unmapped commits, and stale traceability artifacts. Okay, so now we're going to go into the user model and user gamut. It creates the user model. That's something I tell it to do in the planning guidance document. And that helps it think about who is using it and what those users need out of it. So here's what it identified about who the user is. The user is maintainers, myself, who are rebasing regularly onto a fast-moving upstream. Yes. Reviewers and judges auditing replay correctness and provenance. Yes, because the plan... Oops, what have I done? Okay. The plan will be sent through the orchestration system, which has the reviewer and judge, so it's correct about that. I'm pretty pleased. Operators rerunning rebase cycles after interruptions or branch movement. Not really sure what it means by that, but it doesn't sound wrong. And the needs. We need deterministic scope freeze, so the same inputs produce the same plan. Okay. Exhaustive, mutually exclusive commit classification with no uncategorized SHAs. Maybe. Explicit late fix intake that prevents hidden mid-cycle drift. Yep. So on the previous time we did this, we started this rebase, and then we made some other change that I think was unrelated to the rebase, and then we continued the rebase, and it had problems because of that. The plan didn't reflect to that. So the new plan is going to explicitly identify how to handle if that happens. Auditable completion gates tied to reviewer judge approval and evidence consistency. That's correct. Ambiguities from the user model. Speed versus strict traceability. This process prioritizes strict traceability. Okay. Late fixes allowed or forbidden. Allowed only via formal intake and full revalidation. Okay. Metadata doc evidence versus git evidence conflicts. Resolved by fixed evidence precedence. What does it mean by that? I'm going to go ask it. Copy. Over here. The plan states this. What does that mean? Okay, and I'll continue going through here. Late fixes allowed or forbidden. Doc evidence conflicts. Oh, did I copy the wrong thing? I must have. Let me see. What did I just ask it? Oh, no, that's correct. Yeah, this one. Okay. If two sources disagree, we use a strict tiebreaker order instead of guessing. Currently in this plan, the precedence is the git graph / range evidence. What commits or files actually exist in the frozen SHA range? Code diff difference. What changed in those commits? Metadata docs, artifacts, ledgers, notes, packets. So if, say, a promotion packet says commit X is required, but the frozen git range or commit mapping issues otherwise, we trust git diff first. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Mark the conflict and force manual review rather than silently accepting the doc metadata. Sure. Docs can lag or be hand edited. Sure. Git history is the source of truth for, yep. This prevents older traceability drift incidents where artifacts look right but don't match the branch reality. Yep, that's good. Okay, keep on going through the plan. It's telling it to reference these files in the review. That's fine. Acceptance criteria. So many. Okay. Input contract is explicit and validated. Upstream ref, source ref must be full refs or full SHAs. Source head SHA, base SHA must be full 40-character SHAs. Yes. Freeze rule is explicit. Resolve source head SHA once. All cycle commands use frozen SHA, never moving head. Source head SHA. Okay. That is the one that is checked out locally. Oh, okay, I see. So when it issues get commands, it needs to avoid just specifying head as the one of the commits that it's operating on, because the head will move as things are being modified, but won't move as things are being modified is the source head SHA, which is identified during this process. It goes and it finds when we're starting out, here is the head that we started from. That won't ever move. That's what it's talking about between these two. Base SHA rule is deterministic, computed as get merge base upstream source. Yes. So that figures out between my own locally modified version and the upstream version, where's the common base between them, so it can identify what commits were added on top of the previous upstream. Candidate inventory algorithm is deterministic. Command order, merge handling, rename handling, stable row ordering. I don't know what it means by that. Let's go ask it what it means. Copy. Go over here. What is meant by this? Classification buckets are fixed and mutually exclusive by precedence. So, right, already in upstream, drop, late fix pending, required runtime, required docs, state only, manual review. Okay, so it's going to create a list of commits that need to be replayed, and it classifies those commits using these things. Some commits can be dropped, some commits are already in the upstream. So based on the categorization, it may apply the commit or not apply the commit. So that's okay, I believe. Let's see if it answered our question yet. Okay. Two different people or reruns by us later should regenerate the exact same candidate commit list from the same frozen SHAs, each part. Command order. Run the same commands in the same sequence every time. Prevents I ran cherry first versus log first and got different intermediate filtering. Explicit rule for merge commits. Default -- no merges with explicit exception path. Sure. Prevents random inclusion exclusion of merges. Yeah, that's good. Use consistent rename aware evidence so file movement doesn't look like unrelated delete or add on one run, rename to the other. Okay, that's fine. Stable row ordering. Output rows in a fixed order. Topological, then full SHA. Rows. Prevent noisy diff churn in ledgers and avoids accidental reorder-based mistakes. I don't know what it means by that. The inventory step is a reproducible algorithm, not analyst discretion. What is this row thing? Rows means, whoa, where is it? The entries in the candidate inventory table, the ledger we generate for each candidate commit SHA. Okay, each row is one candidate commit. Okay, good. Stable row ordering means those rows are always sorted the same way as the plan specifies. Topological order, then full SHA, so the artifact is deterministic and diffable across reruns. Okay, that's fine, I guess. Per candidate row schema is fixed. Okay. Mapping semantics are fixed. One-to-one, many-to-one, one-to-many, or drop, with non-one-to-one equivalence required. Let's go ask what this means. Late fixed state machine is defined and enforced. Open, then intake, then revalidate, then sealed. Accepted late fixes invalidate prior completion gates and require full revalidation. Okay, that's fine. Okay, how source commits are allowed to correspond to replay commits is predefined. One source commit becomes one replay commit. Or several source commits are intentionally squashed into one, or one-to-many, or just dropped. Okay, that's fine. Non-one-to-one equivalence required means if you squash or split, you must provide the resulting code is functionally equivalent. You must prove, okay, is it functionally equivalent? Okay, good. You can't just say close enough. You need concrete evidence. Okay, this prevents losing behavior when history is rewritten for cleanliness. Great. I like that. Completion gates are hard to fail and oh man. There's some button that I keep hitting that keeps sending this thing to the background. Fortunately, it's not doing something destructive. Okay. 0 unmapped SHAs, 0 unresolved manual review, 0 unapproved late fixes, evidence bundle complete. Reviewer plus judge approvals are present. Approval contract is explicit. The approver format, name, email. Seal requires 2 distinct approvers, reviewer and the judge. Rerun safety rules are explicit. Deterministic branch or worktree naming, clean state. Yep. I like all of that. Rerun safety. Canonical machine checked outputs are deterministic, no wall clock timestamps in canonical sections, stable sort, canonical output artifact location, and write mode are fixed per cycle. Rebase plan cycle dash source head SHA. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, whenever it makes new plans, that new plan is based on the current head SHA. I like that a lot. Rewritten once for per frozen cycle and replaced only after explicit reopen. That's great. Okay. Then we have some implementation tasks, testing strategy. I'm just going to go over the structure of this document before I dive into any part. Then some validation commands, then validation loop results. Oh, okay. This is talking about what the subagents did. Well, no, I don't think so. Just the last person. The last part is this part. Not quite sure. Maybe this is talking about the validation for whenever we, there it goes again. Whenever we create a plan, that plan has to be validated and those commands help it validate. That would make sense. Okay, testing strategy, determinism. 2 independent runs on the same frozen SHA produce identical candidate set. Okay, sure, that's okay. Drift test, move source ref after freeze. Outputs remain unchanged unless reopen is triggered. Move source ref after freeze. Output remains unchanged. I'm gonna ask it what this means. What does this mean? Late fix test. Inject 1 late fix and verify automatic gate invalidation plus required revalidation. I don't think we need to do this. And then gate test. Leave 1 SHA unmapped and verify. So this is talking about how we can test and make sure the plan itself is fine. But I don't really think I want to do all of that. Evidence conflict test. Create a conflicting artifact. Yeah, I don't really want to test the meta plan itself or even the plans. We deliberately test that the process is anchored to the frozen SHA. Oh, source ref is the local source. Okay. Not a moving branch name. Freeze at time t. Source ref equals blah. Resolve and restore. Source head SHA equals that. Someone pushes a new commit, appears on feature foo, now points to that. Expected behavior, your already frozen cycle still uses that. Your outputs, blah, 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 should stay exactly the same. Only if you trigger reopen does the process refreeze. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Implementation tasks. So this, I believe, is talking about implementing the meta plan, the production of the meta plan, I think. Define and validates the strict input grammar for refs, SHAs, and fail-fast behavior. That makes sense. Define the freeze protocol. Yep, that makes sense. Define the canonical candidate inventory algorithm. Yep. Define classification predicates, precedence table, and manual review fallback. Okay. Define replay action policy and mapping type evidence requirements. Define the late fix intake policy. Define evidence hierarchy and conflict resolution. Define completion checklist and approval gate requirements. Define reusable output template for each rebase cycle. It's defining the various tools that it needs to make sure the plan is accurate, but I don't see anything about defining like the overall structure of the plan or the description of what the plan is supposed to do. Let me talk about that. In the implementation tasks, I see lots of tools being created for how to correctly execute the plan, but I don't see anything like, well, about creating a plan overview / guidance, procedure, etc. It's trying to edit it, but I don't want it. It already did it. I was too late. A human-facing procedure overview exists and is versioned. Undo your changes. It's running prune. I'm a little bit nervous about what it's pruning. I want to see what it pruned. It did prune like what we're actively working on, which makes me even more nervous. It started from when I told it to use planning guidance as a reference for how to create this new meta plan. And it ended. Where is the to pattern? If you want, I can now commit the new plan file. Okay. Maybe it's fine that it didn't include, or that it pruned to that. I'm not completely sure, but okay, and it undid what I asked it to do. Okay, reverted those specific additions, removed the new acceptance criterion and implementation task I just added to that. Okay, so I didn't ask you to change it in the first place, and the nature of your change makes me think you're not understanding our overall goal here. What I understand the goal to be now, build a repeatable rebase process that keeps us current with upstream. That's correct. Keep a commit history clean and maintainable, not noisy fix chains. Yes. Preserve strict traceability auditability without adding process clutter. Yeah. Avoid unplanned changes while we're still aligning. Yes. I'll stay in discussion mode and only make changes when you explicitly ask. If you want, I'll now give a tight interpretation of the meta plan focused on that. And you can tell me. Okay. All right. So I've told it that based on the plan, it doesn't seem like a fresh agent is going to understand what the heck it's supposed to be doing. Because the plan does not really. It has a goal there. But not really. There's not really a good overview for like what commits is it supposed to get. I mean, it does have this thing to sort of get the base commit so it finds out what the drift between what we've done versus what upstream has done, which maybe it will understand. There's also like the LLM does understand that we want a nice clean commit chain, not like something it tried to commit and then had to fix and had to fix. All of those should be squashed together, but that's not exactly made clear in the plan. It does seem like there's quite a bit missing from the plan. So I had it launch a sub agent and ask the sub agent what it thinks it should do next given the plan. Okay, what it thinks should happen next. Immediate next action, define a strict input validation for upstream ref, source head SHA, base SHA, because everything else depends on this. What sequence it inferred, and it interpreted the meta plan as an implementation of automation/tooling in this order. Yeah, that's kind of what I said. You're making a bunch of tools for stuff. Key assumptions it had to make. Implement means build code/scripts, not just docs/procedure. There isn't already a tool it should extend. Approval identity checks are trustworthy and machine checkable. Deterministic ordering details. Yeah, so it thinks it's supposed to make a bunch of tools. Ambiguities or blockers it called out. New explicit implementation surface where the scripter tool lives. Okay, full refs grammar is not precisely defined. Bucket boundaries, required docs versus state only versus manual review are not formalized enough. Non one-to-one equivalence evidence minimum is unspecified. Reopen transition mechanics not fully operationalized. Reviewer versus judge identity role verification rules are not explicit. Right. The overall intention of what the plan is for is lacking. We need to clearly say that this plan is itself for making a new plan. Well, I guess it does say it is for creating an implementation plan, but I guess it needs to be quite a bit more explicit. The reason I and the LLM feel like it's about creating the tools is because that's sort of one statement, but then it goes into a lot of depth about all of these various things that need to happen. Um, hmm. So we need to not only clearly say that this plan is there in order to create a new plan that will do the rebase, and everything in the plan is geared towards creating that new plan. The other thing that is missing is either references to planningguidance.md or a sort of customized version of planning guidance embedded into this doc. Overall, we will be we'll be using this generated meta plan as a way for us to say rebase our changes on the latest dev. Oh, actually, it's not quite that. What we're going to do, the way we're going to use the meta plan, oh man, I forgot that arrow keys are currently broken in the dev release of OpenCode. Okay, what, oh boy. I don't know a good way to, oh, I know what I can do. Whoops. I can go there and then just backspace all of this. Okay. The way we're going to use this meta plan is we're going to feed the document. So we're going to say to the LLM to create a new plan that will rebase our changes on the latest upstream dev. Review whatever the path was. Let's see if I have it in my copy history. Doesn't look like it. Oh, wait a second. Nope. Let's grab that file path here. Okay. Usually, when we do this part of the dev process, it looks more like create a plan for, let me think. Adding an undo to our editor. Use planningguidance.md as instructions for how to create your plan. So that's how we normally use the planningguidance.md. But this plan is supposed to replace planningguidance.md. In that kind of statement. So the document either has to have the plan creator read planningguidance.md, and the document should focus on how to adopt that plan for this task, or it just needs to directly Actually, I think I do not want it to have to, I think I don't want it to directly copy pieces of planning guidance.md, because ultimately, if I try to have it do that, it's going to copy some parts, not copy other parts, and it's going to modify parts of the planning.md document, and it's going to be really hard to detect everything that it copied, figure out what it missed, figured out what it changed, because it's going to be all sort of intermingled with the meta plan. And there's certain things in that planning guidance that have been added sort of along the path as we discover, during the planning process, certain things go wrong and I go to tweak that. All of those very specific things are going to be a real pain to make sure that it actually got into the new plan. So I think I want our meta plan to reference planningguidance.md and then sort of be structured around how that operates. Remember, don't make modifications yet. We're aligning on how this meta plan should look. You're defining the meta plan as a planner. Stop. Stop. Go away. Okay. You're defining the meta plan as a planner instruction spec, not an implementation spec. Yeah, or you can see it as an implementation for how to create a plan, but sure, that's fine. The document's primary job is to tell an agent, use this as the procedure for creating a new rebase plan, not build tooling or state machines now. Yep. I think the target shapes should be purpose up front. Yes. Invocation contract, how you'll use it in prompts. No. Okay. Relationship to planning guidance. Either explicit require reading it first. Whoa, 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 whoa. Man, its auto scroll in OpenCode is just completely broken. It drives me nuts. Okay, here we go. Relationship. Okay, explicitly require reading planning.md first and then apply rebase specific constraints from the stock, or embed a rebase specific subset so it can stand alone. Outputs expected generated files, epic story plan paths, not implementation artifacts. Guardrails for the planner, freeze rules, evidence precedents, late fix, deterministic inventory requirements, all framed as requirements the generated rebase plan must include. Validation requirements for the planner. Same missing details ambiguity loop from the planning guidance, but applied to the newly generated plan, sure. Explicitly says the meta plan does not itself execute rebase work. Yes, that's correct. Okay, and then its response to my thing about invocation contract. Planning guidance doesn't define an invocation contract, so we shouldn't add extra ceremony unless it directly helps the goal better to mirror planning guidance style. Keep it as a planning instruction document. Explicitly say this document is for generating a rebase plan, not executing rebase work. Yes. And I definitely want you to require reading of planning guidance.md and do not try to replace planning guidance.md. Instead, you should reference various parts of the planning guidance.md where it makes sense. Not reference, but refer to. It's trying to update the file now, even though I did not explicitly tell it to, but that's fine because we're kind of at the place now where I'm ready to do that. Okay, let me double check here. Were we doing anything? Oh, that was, nope, I think we're done with the actual plugin code. What I was doing most recently is that I did have it make a change to the Context Bonsai plugin. Or no, I actually made a change to OpenCode. I did the rebase process once already. So it's currently rebased on something that's about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks old. And we went through that, and then I used the plugin on the rebased OpenCode to make sure everything works. And I was trying to do that from this one, and I wasn't quite sure because it's sort of a dirty session. There's a lot that has happened in here. So my test about having it prune something and then testing to make sure it forgot it wasn't quite clean. So I did redo everything here in just a brand new session. I did our normal trick of launching the LLM with the plugin, or launching OpenCode with the plugin, asking the LLM what the most interesting file name is. When you do that, it has to run a read command on the current directory so that it gets all the file names in the directory, and then it can identify one useful name. Now, at this point, the output of that read command has listed every single file. So the next thing I tell it to do is to prune that tool call result out, and it runs Context Bonsai prune. And now I ask it again. Oops, I had to do it a couple times. Ask it again to not use any more tools. So don't use the read tool. Don't use the retrieve tool. Just don't use any tool, and ask it if it can list any other file in the directory. And I usually give it the hint of one of the existing files in the directory, because sometimes it will just make guesses, like it'll say package.json, or it'll say some other kind of very common file that's in a lot of project directories, and then it's sort of hard to know whether it was guessing, hallucinating, or whether it saw that in its actual context history. So I explicitly ask it for a file that is not normal, a generic project file. So I asked it to list any files that start with that context, and it couldn't name any other file. So then I said you can use the retrieve tool call, and it did use the retrieve tool call, and that lets it go to that previous prune entry and say, give me the context that was pruned out previously. And because it did that, now the output of the read tool is in its context, and it can see all those files that it previously read, and it's able to show me the file names that start with context. So the tool is working. That's what I was testing over here, but yeah, we're pretty much done with that. Okay, it updated the plan. It did its validation stuff. Looks like it had to do a couple different loops. It reframed the goal to explicitly say this is for creating future rebase plans, not executing rebase work. Good. It added explicit requirement that planning guidance.md is read first and applied. It rewrote the implementation tasks to be plan authoring tasks. Okay, good. Added explicit non-general criterion. It generated cycle plans. Non-goal criterion. Okay, generated cycle plans define/validate rebase work. They do not perform replay during planning. Okay. I'll have to see specifically how it stated that in the plan. fixed canonical artifact path assumptions to match this repro. Now uses .opencode/recovery /rebase plan cycle that. Why? Why? Why did it invent a new path? Does that exist? Oh, this window's cut off at the bottom. Let's make it smaller. There we go. ls.opencode recovery. What? When was all of this added? Current session list, derived expected bonsai marker. What is all of this? Get log.opencode recovery. It's not committed. Get status. There isn't a .opencode/recovery in the uncommitted changes. So is .opencode ignored in getignore? It doesn't look like it. How about in my universal.getignore? Oh, right there it is. I'm a little bit concerned about that. That directory shouldn't really exist. It looks like during our process at some point it created that, but that's not really a thing that we want. Interesting. References existing.md/contextbonsai.md .opencode/ and .opencode/recovery includes make-dir-p opencode/recovery pre-flight command. I also reran validation loop checks after the edits. Okay. That's not really what we want. Is there a .agents? Yeah, plans. That's really where this stuff should be, I think. I'm not sure why .opencode recovery exists at all. That looks like previous LLM garbage. Oh boy. It's already trying to edit the file without me telling it. Let me stop it. Stop. Do not edit files. My attempted edit did not apply. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I aborted your edit. You're way too eager about updating the file. Remember, I already told you not to edit stuff until I explicitly say. It may have pruned out the fact that I told it to do that. What were you about to do to the plan file? I was about to change the meta plan to point to canonical artifacts back to OpenCode Context Bonsai instead of OpenCode recovery. That's also wrong. Reread planning guidance.md. Oh my god, it's doing another prune. What does it think it's doing? Can you unify history at runtime without code changes? Okay, good. That's a very old thing that it really should not need. That's more like what I was hoping it would prune out previously. And little test where I checked if its prune operations is succeeded. That's good to get out. More pruning. Are your prune operations succeeding? Let's trying again because this one probably failed. Context is currently around 52% and 200,000 tokens. That's a bit concerning. That's huge. I reread planningguidance.md fully. You're right, and here's the correction I'm taking from it. This should be treated as a single-story planning task unless scope is truly multi-story. No. The doc should stay in planning mode. No. Must follow the required structure and validation loop. Yeah, kind of. No. My issue is that you're making up paths that do not exist in the planning guidance.md or any orchestration documents. You're seeing old LM garbage and assuming that's correct instead of relying on the files I'm directly telling you about. It's again pruning, unfortunately. I think there's probably a whole lot of very old context that it doesn't need, but it keeps on pruning very recent stuff instead. I should only treat these as authoritative inputs. The planning guidance and the orchestrator agent, sure, that's good. And not invent or normalize paths based on old artifacts. Yes. Before we continue, I think there's probably a lot of very old context that is no longer needed. I keep seeing that you're doing prune tool calls, but they're on pretty recent stuff. How many different task paths exist before we started working on this rebase plan? Oh my god, dude. There is absolutely zero reason to use git log or there. Five distinct tasks before the metadata rebase planning thread. Directory / file name and context pruning interactions. Okay, sure. Git cleanliness checks. Sure. .lm conductor discovery tracking doc investigation. Okay, story 1.1 orchestration. Okay, commit hygiene splitting work. Okay, so it seems like those really need to get pruned. Okay, so it's pruning out some old stuff. I really wish it would have just figured this out on its own. The Context Bonsai tool kind of tells it this is what it's for. It pruned 2 large branches of context. Okay. Now we're at 38%. That's much more reasonable. Okay. Okay. It claims that it's ready to go ahead and update the plan. Mm-hmm. Okay. No reason to give me a precise edit intent summary. Go ahead and make your changes. Do the full validation loop as in planning guidance.md. This is taking so much more time than I thought it was going to do. I thought this would just sort of understand what it needs to do and not overcomplicate things, but it is being a little crazy. Let's go back to image to maze. What was the last thing that I had it do? Planning guidance to, oh yeah. It did the thing where it created a bug and it said that existed before and it ignored it and moved on. And that has happened a few times. It's happened enough now that I want to add additional safeguards into my orchestration process to not allow that to happen anymore. So this has now become not specifically image to maze stuff, but it's sort of a side project of we're going back and modifying our orchestration tooling so that we can continue using that tooling and not have that same problem show up again in all of our projects. And I am happy to do that in this image to maze project specifically because we're trying to make sure that the context bonsai tool works the way we want it to. And I am hoping that once we go down this side project and we complete it and wrap it up and come back to the image to maze, it should automatically realize that it should prune out the stuff that we just did because it's not related to the image to maze project at all. Okay. Planning guidance currently emphasizes validation commands, does not explicitly force a pre-change baseline to catch already failing before implementation. I'd add these changes. Add a new mandatory step in phase 2 or before phase 5, baseline health check. Run target tests and lint before planning completion. Record pass-fail status and failing test IDs. Yes, all of that. Add required section to story templates. Include known failing tests and whether they are in scope. Add a rule in the validation commands split into baseline commands must run before work or post-change commands must run after work. What does that mean? Add rule in validation commands split into... I don't understand this. What is meant by, whoops. Okay. At quality gate in completion checklist, if no new failures introduced relative to baseline, or if the baseline had failures, delta x is explicitly documented. There should never be new failures. Oh, if the baseline had failures, delta is explicitly documented. What does it mean by this? Add reporting requirement in the final plan report include baseline failures, expected unchanged failures, what would count as a regression, add anti-reward hacking guidance. Oh, that's cool that it realized it needed that. Do not claim pre-existing without baseline evidence from recorded command output. Yes. If lint or test includes generated artifacts, document whether those artifacts were present during the baseline. If you want, I can draft explicit markdown patches. Okay, so what it means by add rule and validation command section. I meant change the plan template itself so each story plan explicitly lists 2 command groups instead of one mixed list. Right now it has one section, validation commands. I'm suggesting it becomes baseline commands, pre-implementation, commands run before any code changes, and post-change validation commands, same or similar commands run after implementation. That rule forces planners to capture a before-after comparison so that we can prove whether failures were new or pre-existing. I still don't get it. Okay. Apparently it's the key point. Baseline commands and planning are not about plan file changes. They're about recording the repo's health before implementation starts, so later we can compare after implementation. That's true. So during planning, you would run the baseline checks, record the results in the plan, then implementation happens later. After implementation, run the post-change checks and compare to baseline. Without the baseline, this was pre-existing is guesswork. Yes. With the baseline, we can prove regression versus existing failure. What is an example pre and post command? Use the simplest example possible. Okay, pre, bun run tests, that thing. Result recorded in plan, 2 failed. Post, bun run test. That is the exact same command. Result recorded in execution report, 0 failed. The delta proves your change fixed something. That proves the change introduced lint failures. Oh, regression example. Okay, simplest example, regression example. Sure, but those are the exact same commands. Can you provide an example of why you'd need separate pre and post commands? Often they are the same command, and that's ideal. You'd need separate lists only when context changes after implementation. Pre, it does that, and the new file doesn't exist yet. Post, it runs two different sets of tests because we added one. Another example, pre, it runs that. Okay, that's the same exact example with a different file. Pre-post can be identical, separate sections, just make it explicit when post needs extra coverage. Okay, fine. I'm a little bit concerned that that's going to require a little bit too much from the planning stage. I'd rather it just be a little more generic than explicit. In fact, so this style that it's suggesting of running individual test files can be faster, can let it iterate quicker, but it also opens up the possibility that some change it made affects some other test that it's not paying attention to. So I want the full test suite run on every time. So right. So we do need the baseline command output saved with a list of failing tests, but there shouldn't really be separate commands. And I bet that it's going to attempt to, oh, it didn't attempt to create the plan yet. Okay. All right. So had it actually created a plan? I don't think so. I think we're all just talking about what we're about to do. Oh, it created a really complex plan. Is that? Okay, so give me a plan about how you intend to modify planning guidance.md. Also, read orchestrator agent.md and, well, actually, .lm conductor /star. Let me just double check. Yep. Oh, well, there's way too much in there. I just want it to review this, this, and this. Oh, and the developer. Okay, those things. This, 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 and this. So we've got the orchestrator, the reviewer, the judge, and the developer. How those could change to match the new Okay, so that's probably going to spin for a little while because it has to pretty much create the whole plan. Here, it has updated the meta plan with the constraints and reran the full validation loop. What I changed, kept as a plan for making plans doc. Yep. Anchored it to authoritative docs only with line referenced. I don't want line referenced. Do not use line references as the document generally undergoes changes. Use section, heading, or generic concepts to refer to the authoritative docs. Okay. Removed non-authoritative path. Good. Come back. Made output path requirements explicitly follow planning guidance. Good. Fixed high impact ambiguity steps by making these deterministic. Baseline default is upstream dev unless explicitly overridden. That's good. Bucket precedence order is explicitly fixed. Come back. Stop auto scrolling. Candidate scope default is all commits. Sure. Author filter mode only on explicit user request with fixed identity map. That should be fine because it has the it's doing the finding the base commit, and it's finding all commits that have been applied that were not on the original thread. That should work, I think. Updated the validation loop results to reflect the current validation cycle. Okay. Oh, right. Inside of the doc, it records its own validation steps. Okay. Okay, good. It updated stuff to get rid of the specific line references. Hmm. Well, let's take a look at the plan. Okay, create a reusable deterministic process for generating implementation-ready rebase plans for future upstream updates. This document governs how to create the next rebase plan. It does not execute rebase work. Maintainer, okay, yeah, I don't need to redo the gamut stuff. Ambiguities from user model, that's fine. Context references, sure. Input contract is explicit and validated. Yep. Baseline policy is fixed. Let me have it go through the same test. Remember when you launched subagents and asked it what it thinks it should do next? Yep, okay. Try it again and see if we were successful. Okay. Okay, here's where it says to read the planning guidance and apply its process to this rebase planning use case. Yep, produce a new rebase cycle plan that includes strict input grammar for ref SHAs and fail fast behavior. Okay, in that generated plan, define freeze protocol and immutable cycle boundaries. In that generated plan, define canonical candidate inventory algorithm. Right, okay, exact command sequence, no merges, rename aware file evidence. Okay, stable ordering, explicit population scope policy recorded in generated plan header. Default is all commits, and author filter mode requires specific user request. Okay. In the generated plan, define classification predicates. Yep, that's all the same stuff. Okay. Testing strategy, determinism test. 2 independent runs on the same frozen SHAs produce identical candidate set. Yeah, we can't really test the plan. We're not going to have a testing strategy. This just needs to be gotten rid of because this is going to be way to test it. The only way to do it is to actually do the implementation, and that's not great. So copy that. Nope. Copy. Validation. Okay. Oh, over here. Okay, so it did the subagent thing. Immediate next step is to correctly read planning guidance.md, not start building tooling. It treats the metadata plan as instructions to generate a new read base plan artifact under agent plans. Yep. It keeps the execution out of scope and calls out planning only non-goal. Planning only non-goal. Yeah, let me take a look at that again. Search for non. Generated rebase plan includes a non-goal statement. This cycle plan defines and validates rebase work. It does not perform replay or rewrite during planning. Okay, yep. Remaining rough edges. It still infers some implementation-ish details, machine checkable approvals, tooling format because the metaplan asks for them without creating complex schema. It still flags the naming / path choice ambiguity within conventions. What do you mean by naming path choice ambiguity? It still needs more explicit predicate detail for edge case bucket classification. I'm not so sure about that. The meta plan says to use planning guidance for path conventions, which is good, but it doesn't prescribe one exact output file name. So 2 valid operators could both comply yet produce that one versus that one. At one point, we explicitly defined a rebase file name. We should make sure that still exists. The file name included the base SHA. Okay. Oh, actually, it wasn't the base SHA, it was the source head SHA, which it did identify there. Let's see. Oh, it uses base SHA instead of, okay. I meant source head SHA, not base SHA. Okay, there we go. Looks good. Okay. Now, the other thing was the testing strategy. Now, let's talk about testing strategy. I don't think we can actually test this properly without actually implementing some rebase plan. For this meta plan, testing strategy should not pretend we can fully verify behavior without running a real generated plan. Split into 2 levels, metadata plan validation, can do now. Determinism of required rules, ambiguity, missing details, loop pass, generated plan checklist completeness. Operational validation requires concrete generated plans. So yes, for this document, those later items are really acceptance criteria scenarios for the generated plan process. Okay, yes. Updates the wording. It'll be really interesting to actually run this plan and have it generate a plan and then have it orchestrate the plan based on its generated plan. I'm really curious about whether this is actually going to work well. This is sort of a level back from the normal plans that we create. Change the section from testing strategy to validation strategy and split it into meta plan validation and operational validation. Okay. Commit this plan. Okay, back to the image to maze guy. So we're having it update the orchestration stuff, the planning guidance stuff, and here's what it's suggesting it's going to do. Make every story or epic run against one standard validation command set. Okay, sure. Capture baseline failures before implementation. Definitely enforce no new failures versus baseline as a first class gate. Yes. Eliminate ambiguous pre-existing claims without evidence. Yep. Update planning guidance.md. Add a new required concept, validation baseline. Good. Keep one validation command section, no separate pre or post command list, and then add required result sections in a plan. Baseline results, post change results, delta analysis. Cool. Add a rule. Baseline and post change must run the same command set unless a command is impossible pre-change. Okay. Add a rule. Default validation set should be full suite quality checks. Yep. Add anti-reward hacking text that says no pre-existing failure. Okay, yep, that's good. Add to templates. Epic story, single story. Templates. Yeah. There's little templates for how to create the stories. So, yep, that's good. Validation baseline subsection should have a structured table with the command and the exit code and the failing tests. Cool. And a path to the artifact. Good. I like that. It might mean we need to store the test results artifact during the baseline, and we need a standard place to store that. Probably should go in agent/plans or /agent/something. Let me talk to the LLM about that part. Then update the orchestrator agent document so that in the developer loop, it adds explicit baseline checkpoint before story phase 1. Yeah, we could do that. Collect the baseline results from the developer subagent or baseline only subagent and record in the state tracker. Okay, extend the state tracker with all of this stuff. That's good. And add a decision rule that the story cannot be marked complete if the post change introduces net new failures against the baseline, unless the user approves the exception. And update the progress or final report templates to include the baseline versus post delta. Yes, that I definitely want. Update the developer subagents so that it runs the full validation command before coding and records the outputs. Okay, sure. Maybe it should also escalate if the baseline is not matching. Um, okay, in completion report template, add required sessions. That's good. Add instruction. If failures are unchanged from baseline, explicitly mark them as unchanged with evidence. Keep focused commits, but require validation, evidence, artifacts, paths, or concise summaries. Not quite sure what that means. Update the reviewer subagent. Verify the developer included the baseline evidence. Verify the claimed pre-existing failures match baseline. Yep. Flag any new failure introduced with post change as high or critical. Yes. Yes, good. And extend the report template with the baseline verification and the regression delta verification. Okay, yeah. And then the reviewer judge should reject approvals lacking baseline evidence for disputed failures. Yes. Require explicit acceptance or rejection of each claimed unchanged baseline failure. Interesting. The baseline evidence adequacy pass fail and regression decision section. Loop rule. If baseline / post delta is unclear, return needs revision with only evidence gathering actions. Sure. Rollout order. Update the planning guidance first, update the orchestrator instructions, update the developer reviewer judge instructions, and then run a pilot story to validate the quality. Okay, I like that, except I don't want that to be in the plan. We'll just do that separately. Then acceptance criteria for this doc update effort. All 5 docs mention baseline evidence explicitly. Single or story / single story templates contain the baseline plus delta sections. The orchestrator decision logic includes no new failures versus baseline gate. And the reviewer and judge templates explicitly verify baseline claims. And if you want a next step, okay. There was one thing. Did I put it in my copy buffer? Run one pilot. Oh, well, yeah. Do this part separately after you think the plan is in good shape. Actually, changes are okay. And the other thing, update reviewer judge instructions. The thing that I had in mind was when it has to do a revision. I forgot. I kind of had in my mind some possibility where this could go off the rails when the judge says it needs a revision and then something changes, but I can't quite think of what I was trying to imagine. Let me just tell it this part for now. Shoot, I wish I said that out loud. Probably would have helped me remember. Okay. Oh, actually, yeah, I do want it to create a plan because I'm going to implement the plan using a different agent, I think. So use planning guidance.md. Follow those precise instructions for generating a story that updates these files. And the reason I'm going to actually do the implementation in a separate session is because the OpenCode harness has permissions based on what directory it was launched from. So it's launched from the current directory, which is the image to maze project, but the authoritative source of the orchestration stuff is in a whole separate directory. So if I try to do that here, it's going to have to keep on continuously asking me for permissions. Every time it launches a subagent, it needs to reacquire the permissions and ask me if it can read and edit the files in the other project directory. So rather than that, I'm just going to have this create the plan. Then I'm going to open a new session in the proper directory. And then I'm going to have an LLM re-go over the plan and fix the paths because the paths are all going to be different. And then I'm going to implement the plan in that new session. Okay, it's doing it the right way. It wrote the file. Now it's launching the subagents to review the file. Great. Let's go back to our Context Bonsai guy. Yep, this is the one. What was the last thing I asked it to do? Oh, the up arrow isn't working? That's weird. Okay, well, where's my last thing? Oh, commit this plan. Okay, so it committed our new plan. Now it's time to orchestrate this plan. Let me think. Does the plan ever mention fetching the latest upstream dev? Oh boy. Oh man. Upstream dev. Yes, it does. Okay, great. So let's orchestrate that. Before we start, what do you think is the proper output artifact from this process? A new generated rebase plan document under agents plans named deterministically per the meta plan. Yep. And that generated plan should include all of that stuff. Yes, okay. Yes. Now let's orchestrate that plan. Now, I wonder how this is going to go because the orchestration process that I have is sort of built around developing code, making code changes, testing the code, making the code matches the plan. But this process is not going to generate code. There's not specific tests to run. It's generating a plan. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. Same for the reviewer and the judge. All of these are focused on like code changes, not plan changes. Usually I have it go through the planning guidance.md doc to do stuff. We'll see how this goes. It'll be interesting. Image to maze guy is still doing its stuff. Yep, seems like it's working correctly. Okay. Context Bonsai side. Theoretically, it's doing what it needs to do. Might be time to just go ahead and wrap up for today because both of these are going to take a while to get through the current process. Um, I kind of do want to immediately go on to have it implement the changes that it made, though, so that would happen off stream if I ended it now. And the alternative, what usually happens when we have two, or what usually happens when we have all of our LLMs busy doing stuff and there's no LLM to go back and interact with, is we just go to another one of our side projects, like this one, where I'm creating a demo recorder. Actually, I think I never streamed any process of this, but um, I'm making a way that lets me record LLM demos. So when I'm interacting with LLMs, I typically have them do stuff and then it goes and does stuff in the background and I don't pay attention to it. And then eventually it'll finish, but I'm working on other stuff or maybe even have, you know, gone to sleep and woken up the next day and I'm ready to come back to the project. And I'd like the recording to have kept going and not had to pause it, but it will automatically itself pause the recording when there's no activity happening. And then once things start happening again, automatically restart the recording. That's what this demo recorder is about. And that way I can just have a recorder that's recording a session where I'm interacting with an LLM and there's not huge long pauses where nothing happens because I just let it go in the background. So that's one project I've been working on that we can potentially get back to. Another one is converting my orchestration framework, the LLM conductor, into a skill because skills are pretty broadly compatible across lots of LLM harnesses now. So I'm considering, you know, would it look like if this LLM conductor thing was a skill instead of just a bunch of MD files that I copied every single project. If it's distributed as a skill, then I can sort of install it universally, and then in every project that I launch, it just has access to that skill on it. I don't have to copy all the project.md files over everywhere. That's one benefit. And also during this, I've also been considering exploring another thing that I've thought about modifying LLM Conductor to do, and that is that many of the tasks are automatable. The orchestrator itself is almost entirely an automatable process. All it's responsible for is making sure that it goes from development to reviewer to the review judge and back around in various cycles until something is accepted, and then it moves on to the next story, picks the next story, launches a new developer. All of that stuff is pretty much deterministic, and there's not much LLM sort of decision-making things that have to happen on the fly. So the orchestrator role can almost be completely eliminated if we just write code to do that. So I'm also exploring that part of it in this project. And I also don't think I've done this at all on the stream, but that is something that I've been working on in the background. And then we have other things. We've been modifying the Pi agent to add VI code editing. And we actually started working on a separate Pi agent project to sort of build out a full interactive harness that will help us bounce between projects and keep our status between what projects we're working on, and sort of let us know on our projects which LLM is sort of completed and is ready for us to interact with it again, and we can sort of bounce between the different projects without doing it this way, where I have separate desktops and I keep a little notepad over here to sort of let me know what this project currently is, because I do still have to bounce between these projects. I have to go, check on image to maze guy, see if that's done, check on the context bonsai guy, see if that's done. Instead, I'm going to make this harness in Pi that will just sort of manage all of this for me and not require me to bounce between things and make sure that things are progressing. Okay, anyway, now that we've used some time, both of these have finished. So we'll be able to take a look. It did create a plan for rebasing. I'm happy with that. Apparently it only needed one iteration. That's interesting. Okay, let's take a look at it. Produce an implementation-ready deterministic release cycle execution plan for the branch state that against upstream dev with explicit classification mapping, late fix governance, and machine checkable seal gates. Okay, so that's the goal for this current plan. That's what this plan is. I'm not sure the goal itself is correct. So this goal is theoretically what this plan itself does, not what the output of the plan will produce, which is the actual rebased project. This plan defines and validates future rebase replay work. It does not execute commit, replay, history rewrite, or branch updates during this planning. Okay, story description. This single story plan is generated from that and applies that planning guidance, path A, and validation loop requirements. It freezes source context, defines deterministic inventory and classification policy, and specifies hard fail completion gates required before a later rebase cycle may be sealed. Frozen cycle header. Read and applied planning guidance status. Plan type, single story. Upstream ref is that. Okay, upstream override policy is only allowed when explicitly user supplied. Okay. Okay, don't need the models. Context references. It's still using line specific references in planning guidance. That's unfortunate. Required missing details and ambiguity loop. Okay. Acceptance criteria has lots of acceptance criteria. Implementation task. Define a strict input grammar and freeze protocol. Okay. This is again a plan for making a plan rather than the actual plan itself, unfortunately. Okay. Oh, wait. Take another look here. At the bottom, it looked more specific. Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, there's some specific things. I'm not sure that this is doing what I want. Let's go back to the LLM and let's chat about it. I don't think this does what I wanted. Do not edit files. We are only discussing and aligning for now. My read of what you wanted was orchestrate the meta plan itself as a guidance artifact quality check, not produce or commit a concrete cycle plan yet. False. That's not what I wanted. I did want a concrete cycle plan. Validate whether a fresh process would follow it correctly and tighten wording until behavior matches. Keep this in design alignment mode, not generating new files commits. If that's right, the next step should be defining the exact expected output of orchestrating the meta plan. Review report plus gap list, not a new plan file. What the heck? Define stop condition. We're aligned when subagent interprets the next action as generate plan using planning guidance with no implementation assumptions. Can't really understand what you've said as written. I'll say that I don't think your interpretation of what I want is correct. We just orchestrated the meta plan. The output I expected from that is a specific plan that we can give to an orchestration agent, and that agent should well, the agent shouldn't produce. The agent should carry out the orchestration process, and the end result would be a new head with our commits replayed over the latest upstream dev. So we have authored a meta plan. The output should be a concrete plan that can be directly orchestrated to carry forward our diverging commits. Let's see. Thank you, that's clear and you're right. I produced the wrong kind of output. You expected a concrete orchestration plan for the orchestration whose terminal outcome is that. Okay. I think it's getting confused about the roles here. I still have little faith that you're correctly understanding what's going on. Our goal in this session is to create the meta plan. And we have created a first iteration of it. Now we're attempting to make sure the output of executing the meta plan is a concrete plan. Okay. Oh boy. Of our launched orchestrator should be a concrete plan that can directly be okay. But our own direct output is the meta plan, not the concrete plan. The meta plan now uses source head SHA in the deterministic naming rule. That's fine. That's not related to what was happening now. So generated names are that is completely unrelated to the point I'm trying to make. Yes, our deliverable is the meta plan. The meta plan must be good enough so that when it's orchestrated, the output is a concrete rebase plan. That concrete rebase plan should then be directly orchestratable to carry forward diverging commits. Yes. Now it understands, I think. So we have now done one orchestration which produced a plan. I don't think that plan is clear enough that its orchestration would result in a rebased branch for us. Don't make any changes, but re-examine the created concrete plan to see if you think this would do the right thing. Also, launch a sub-agent with explicit instructions to not follow the plan, but predict what the result of following the plan would be. Okay. Back on the image to maze style, let's see. It did create a plan for us. Now I'm going to copy that plan. Why can't I? Oh, there we go. Now I can copy this plan to the correct place. Let's just do a new tab and go to, I'll also update this. Side quest in tab 2. Update orchestration to have baseline test results to avoid those tests are already failing before our changes problems. Okay. There. Now, LLM conductor. Do I already have a .agents plans? Yes, I do. So now I want to copy that to here. Okay. Oh, cannot. Oh, because this was actually in the image to maze project. There. Good. Oh, what's that? Livestream user. Don't know what that is. And currently agents is untracked. That's fine, I think. Now let's launch a new LLM. OpenCode dev. Read that. Okay. Now read the orchestrator agents dot md. Oops. File. Okay. And orchestrate this plan. Let's see if it does this correctly. Right, that's not where it is. What path did I give it? I just said orchestrator agent file. Oh. I forgot. Hold on. First, use planning guidance.md to update this plan. It needs the correct paths. Follow this. Oops. I also give it the wrong file name over here. I believe that is an underscore. Okay. Follow the steps in planning guidance.md to validate your changes. Okay. Back to Context Bonsai. The sub-agent prediction. The concrete plan is process/governance heavy and does not include execution steps to actually replay commits. So if an orchestration followed it literally, it would not produce validated artifacts and checks. It would most likely produce validated artifacts and checks, but not a rebased branch. Sub-agent prediction also said the same thing. Okay. The generated concrete plan is not yet the kind that would directly orchestrate to. Okay. So it understands the problems. Now, how might we fix the meta plan such that the LLM using it would create a proper concrete plan that would actually result in a new head that is our commits rebased over the latest upstream dev. Okay. Add an explicit required outcome section for the generated plans. Execution end state. Target branch tip is based on a freshly fetched upstream dev and includes only approved carry forward commits. Yep, that's a good goal. Require generated plans to include an execution phase. Whoa. Just this auto scrolling and this stuff in OpenCode drives me nuts. Okay, where were we? Execution phase, not just governance. Fetch, prune, create or recreate the clean replay work tree, replay commits in a deterministic order, resolve the conflicts with intent-preserving policy, run required validations, and do a final diff inventory gate. Okay, that looks good. Require generated plans to include concrete replay commands, not placeholders like replay action policy, but actual command skeletons. Okay, that I think is fine. Add the latest upstream freshness rule. Yep. Mandatory replay set materialization artifact in generated plan. Yes. The final generated plan, not the meta plan, should have a specific set of artifacts that it's going to replay. Yes, that's right. Okay. Okay, so it's going to try to fix the meta plan now. Our orchestration modification task is still running. Okay, it's got these skeleton commands. That's good. Oh, here's another change it made. Require the generated plan to define concrete execution phases with commands for fetch, prune, and frozen SHA capture. Isolate the replay work tree creation with rerun safety. Deterministic replay of the approved commit set. All of that looks pretty good. Require the generated plan to define a final rebased head verification commands proving the branch is rebased on the latest fetched upstream SHA. The replayed commit inventory matches the approved set, and no unresolved manual/late gate remains. There is an opportunity for this to go wrong, and that is whenever the validation phase happens, it's going to make sure that it's played against the latest upstream dev. However, upstream dev is a continually moving target. So I think on the when the plan first starts, oh no, actually it's fine because the plan itself freezes the proper commit SHA. No, it doesn't. It freezes the source commit SHA. We need to freeze the upstream dev commit SHA as well. Maybe it does also freeze that. Upstream freeze rule is explicit. Okay, resolve and persist upstream head SHA. Okay, yeah, good. That's what I'm wanting. Nice. That's pretty cool when it's on the same path that I already thought about, and it just did it for me. Okay, yep. So that's neat because the reason it found that is because it sent it to one of the validation subagents, or like it does the ambiguity check, and the subagent realized this part here is ambiguous. I like that. In fact, I'm going to ask it a little bit more about exactly what prompted that change. Whoa, I'm back. Okay, it says it's done. No more changes now. Can you tell me what prompted you to add all the upstream ref items? Did one of the sub-agents identify an ambiguity? That change was prompted by the ambiguity subagent result. It flagged a high-impact ambiguity. The meta plan allowed upstream ref override in one place, but still had hard-coded final outcome languages to upstream/dev elsewhere. Okay, yeah. That creates two valid interpretations, always upstream/dev versus the overridden baseline, which could produce different final heads. Yeah. So I normalized wording around upstream ref without upstream/dev and required freezing upstream head SHA that for determinism. So yes, okay, cool. That's pretty cool. Nice to see, like, there's a reason we go through this planning process, and there's a reason I have it launch these subagents, and it's for things like that. It's nice that I didn't have to be the one that caught it. Okay, so now it's time to test our meta plan again. However, oh boy, there are still some artifacts from our previous test. And you delete them. I should have asked it first to identify what those artifacts are. I don't want it to delete random stuff. Okay, hopefully it just finds one plan, and it's that plan with the commit SHA on it. Yeah, okay. Whoa, 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 whoa. What did you just do? Oh, it just deleted all the content out of that file. Okay. Whoa, lots of stuff. Hmm. Oh, that's because, well, I don't know. There's quite a bit of stuff here. This one I expect to be different. Modified, good. This one is deleted. Oh, so there's... Yep. Okay, I think probably that one does commit only have stuff from that previous test run. Okay, revert that commit, then commit the changes to our meta plan. Let's see what image to maze guy is still doing. It's no longer the image to maze, it's the LLM conductor agent. Still implementing its changes. Actually, no, it's still just creating the plan. Oh no, it's implementing the actual changes, I think. Oh, I see why it's editing those. Okay. All right. Oh, there. Since I was able to do the OpenCode rebase, there was a feature that existed when we were originally working on OpenCode on our Context Bonsai changes on top of OpenCode, where we could click on one of these subagents and jump right to its sort of view, its context. That at one point broke, and the latest rebase on the latest of OpenCode brings it back, which is really nice. It was pretty annoying not to be able to get to a specific subagent that was launched. Well, that's going to run for a while, it looks like. Okay, so this reverted the previous one where we tried to use the meta plan to create a new plan, and now it has added a commit to the changes that we made to our metadata plan, and I think now we're ready to orchestrate. So now if we orchestrate this meta plan, we should end up with an implementable rebase plan, right? Okay, orchestrate the meta plan. Cool. Oh, and on this one, you can actually see, so this OpenCode is running the messed up version. This is like before our rebase happened, where now we can't click on here to get to the agent context. Yeah, this is the one that was pretty annoying to deal with, because now in order to be able to see this subagent, I have to use this Control X down, and then I have to, oh, that's doing the wrong thing here for GitHub stuff. And then I have to like go left and right to go through all the subagents and make sure I'm looking at the correct one, although this time it happened to land on the correct one that I wanted. And I can go up to get back to the parent agent. Nice. But yeah, you should be able to just click on this and jump right to it. And that also allows you to go to like an old one where it launched a previous one, and you could click on that and get straight to that instead of having to use the left-right navigation to try and find the right one. Now it's fixed, and I can go straight to this, or I can go straight to this old agent, or I can go straight to this old agent. Okay, so our LLM conductor guy is still moving. Our Context Bonsai guy is still running. And ideally, at the end of this, once we have these meta instructions that work and are able to produce a concrete rebase plan, then I'll be able to make some automation, and I can hook it up into GitHub to automatically just routinely run to get the latest upstream dev and replay my changes based on that upstream dev. And just it'll have a whole cycle where it uses the meta plan to produce a concrete plan, and then it uses the orchestration framework to implement the concrete plan. And at the end of all of that, it should just automatically have an updated OpenCode with our changes on top of that. And it should just automatically continue to go. And I can make some escalation path if things go wrong. That's the idea behind what I'm doing now. Just to have this sort of ongoing maintenance where we have to keep our changes up to date with the latest OpenCode changes. Just make that a completely automated process that we don't have to fool around with too much. All right, both subagents still running. It's interesting that the reviewer is inspecting the commit summary and the full diff. I'm curious about whether the reviewer is going to understand that what we're doing is creating the concrete plan, but not actually implementing the concrete changes. Both of our agents are still deep in their work. Maybe it's got time to go ahead and wrap up for now. We'll at least wait around to see what the judge says about this plan, because if it does not send it back for revision, then we can actually try it out and see what happens. In the meantime, I can update our little project description. There we go. And over here, I think this is, well, okay. This guy is creating GUI to modify various tweakable values for creating the maze. Okay. Oh, it looks like it has gone back for a revision. Let me go into the sub agent here. Define a metadata plan, meta plan. Oh. Is this really? I'm not sure this is doing the right thing anymore. Let me go back to the parent. Wait a second. That's not the parent. Go up. There we go. Orchestrate the meta plan. Yeah, we are currently orchestrating the meta plan, which is supposed to produce the concrete plan, yet the subagent's goal says define a meta plan. Oh, no. That's not what it says. It ran get show to look at that commit, and that commit says this. Okay, so go back to the very top here. Oh man, this thing. Okay, to the very top. Your oh my gosh, stop it. Your developer subagent, read and follow those. Revise iteration 2 for story orchestration. Address only these judge approved items. Restore the meta plan to reusable meta plan guidance, not snapshot specific concrete plan. Okay, yep. So there's still problems because apparently the developer subagent modified the meta plan instead of producing its own concrete plan separate. Create a concrete generated artifact file. Yep. Keep deterministic naming as a general rule in the meta plan. Generation rule. And ensure declared generated file name is instantiated as a real file in the same change. I'm not sure what it's trying to say there. Constraints. Minimal necessary changes. Keep planning only semantics for the meta plan file. Concrete file should be execution ready plan artifact. Return commit hashes. What changed and confirmation. Okay. And that completed. Let's go back up to the parent. And now the reviewer is reviewing the changes. No blocking defects is what the reviewer says, and it's suggesting this judge can accept this. Okay. Now it's going to launch the judge, and the judge probably will accept this. So whether or not the judge accepts this, and whether or not the created plan is actually a good implementable concrete plan, there's still something we need to address in the meta plan, because that developer should not have tried to alter the meta plan at all, but it did. Okay, done. Initial attempt failed review because it overwrote the metadata plan. Yep. Okay. Okay, so we need to fix this failure in the meta plan. That. First, eliminate the two commits that were added. Not revert. I don't know, rebase back to the commits before those. Stop after that. Okay. Now I also want to take another look at the first developer subagent that it launched. Oh yeah, now I can't. So now is the problem with this random, like this instance of OpenCode was based off of some other random OpenCode commit that does not let us click into these individual agents. So getting back to this developer is going to be tricky. Let me just try quickly. Okay, go left. That's a reviewer. Left, that is a judge. This should be a developer. Go away, this thing. Okay. Read and follow, revise 1.1. Okay, I don't want the revision. I want to go back further. So that's a reviewer. There's a judge, but that isn't approved as is. What was this for? Where are the judge review? Evaluate review findings for story 1.1, iteration 2 of 5. Oops. Go away. That dialogue is annoying. That's a review agent. This is the ambiguity check for the planner, which I don't think we need. Missing blocking details after plan edits. Okay, I don't know how to get back to the original developer agent. What I wanted to see is what task exactly was given to that developer subagent. Okay, let's talk about what went wrong. In only 5 words, well, let's give it 10 words or fewer. What went wrong? Subagent modified, yes, okay. Okay, how could we fix that? Add hard guardrails. Do not modify metaplan file acceptance criterion. Required output file pass File path must differ from metaplan path. Validator checks metaplan unchanged. Okay, sure. Judge checklist includes artifact type correctness as a blocking gate. Developer prompt explicitly. Create a new file. Never edit source metaplan. Okay. Go ahead and update the plan metaplan with these changes. Okay. Oh, hey, our LLM conductor thing finished. Corrected the plan paths, ran the planning validation loop, then orchestrated the story. I didn't ask it to orchestrate the story, but it did anyway. I guess I asked it to orchestrate the story, and then I asked it to first fix the plan. So I guess it did that and then went back to orchestrating. First judge review cycle requested one revision, the template delta token canonicalization plus story context evidence sections. Iteration 2 addressed it, and judge returned as is. Okay, hold on. Strengthen the plan contract with explicit rules for source of truth evidence, command precedence, freeze, delta algorithm, exception ledger, and deterministic fail to fail handling. Okay, current working tree has these modified files. No commits were created. If no commits were created, then it didn't actually do the tasks correctly. If no commits were created, I don't think you did orchestration correctly. When you launched the developer sub-agents, did you point it to the developer agent.md document? Okay, fine. Does that file say to commit changes? Pretty dang sure it does, because I think we recently had this problem where it simply wasn't following basic instructions. This is a session where we can get back to the developer. So now I think I want to go back to it. Let's go to the initial developer here. Oh, that's so much nicer. Okay. Oh, but now, so here's another thing. At some point, OpenCode used to let us interact with these subagents. We could go to one of them and type additional stuff into the window here, but now we cannot. That's unfortunate. Let's see, what I want to look for is some reason why it didn't commit changes. No commits were created. hold on. What was implemented? Added a shared unified validation contract to all 5 docs with consistent definitions. Oh, right. The validation is all about making sure that all the tests pass, or at least having a baseline for tests. Okay, I kind of forgot what we were doing on this one. I think what I want to try doing is to find the session ID of this LLM agent and launch a new session with this session ID. That might let us communicate with this agent. So let's see. Unfortunately, we can't see the session title. So I think I have to do this. And I have to go to a directory where OpenCode, the code base, exists. Oh, there. There we go. Okay. Your task is to find the session in the OpenCode session database that contains the text that. You are to make no modifications to OpenCode. You can use its source code to understand where the session database is stored. So the idea is this subagent session will have its own session ID. And OpenCode lets you launch and specify a specific session ID to resume. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to load up this session and chat with it as if it's an ongoing session. Good, good, good. It's doing some SQLite queries. Hmm. So it's having trouble finding it. Oh, it might have found it there. Or maybe that's a little bit too broad of a query that I just gave it. That one looked better. I'm hoping that's correct. RG, what? It's using rip grip. I'm slightly concerned about what happened. because it's talking about a JSON message store, which is an old thing. Earlier versions of OpenCode stored all of its sessions in JSON files, but more recent versions use a SQLite database. And I thought I was using a version that was doing a SQLite database. Yeah, I think this one is a pretty recent version of OpenCode that's like 2.5, 3 weeks old. I think this one is too. Let me just, oops. Yeah, because this is the one that lets me do this. Yeah, this is a more recent one. What I found for your target text, the exact string was not present in opencode.db in any column. The story text itself appears in session diff records. Session diff. I don't even know what that would be. So if you meant the exact quoted prompt text, there's no direct session hit in the database. If you meant the corresponding story content, not looking for story content. How about just, oh boy, this was so much. Okay, just, hmm. Are you looking in the, I think it said no columns matched. Well, how about this? It found two messages. One of them might be this. It might be this session, though. That would be funny. 11 distinct sessions. Wow. What? All right. There's a bunch of sessions. So we created some tools that would help us inspect various OpenCode sessions. Can't quite remember what they are or where they live. Let me look in home/bin. No, none of that. If they're not there, I don't know where they would be. Oh, that's a... Let me try to get another string that might be useful. Actually, this is too much of a side thing. The whole point is I want to find out why that session didn't commit its changes, because it should have. We've been seeing this recently where we're going through the orchestration process, the same process we've been using for weeks and weeks at this point. And the developer, when we launch a developer agent, we tell it to do a thing. It has instructions that tell it to commit it's code. And I'm pretty sure the reviewer also has instructions that say the code needs to actually be committed. And right now, the whole process isn't finding anything. And that's pretty concerning. And I want to find out why. Maybe it's running into Git errors. We have seen it like launching new or running Git commands that cause a little password dialog to open up. And I wonder if whenever it does that and we just cancel the dialog, if it decides, okay, I can't really do Git stuff anymore. I wonder if that causes it to stop doing it or what. I don't quite understand what's been happening. And I really would like to, because this cannot continue. If it's not going to follow those instructions, the whole orchestration framework is much less valuable. So I'd really like to get to the bottom of that. Hmm. That's still on defining the task. Wait a second. Oh, this is the one we need. Nope. Mm-mm. There's where it updated the plan. Here's where it launched the developer. Okay. Let's see if early on there's anything. Your task, read that, implement unified baseline contract across planning and subagent docs. Implement all. Okay, let's see if I can find this string. Okay. How about this string? That string has no matches in the database. In the secondary database, found in a part. That might be what I need, actually. Let's try all three of these sessions and see what happens. So first of all, it's OpenCode dev continue session ID that. No, session dash ID. Just session. There we go. Now, your task is to find the, oh, that's the actual session where we were trying to find the thing, so not that one. Next. That. That looks like the same thing. Oh yeah, it is. You can tell from the title. It looks like it's launching the latest session rather than a specific session we're asking for. That's the same thing. I don't think this is going to find it. That's not even listing sessions. Wait, something is... Get rid of that. Oh, there's only two. Okay, that's fine. Let me try quit because I need to do this. Then do I get more sessions? No. What's going wrong? First of all, I can't do it from this directory. I have to do it from the LLM conductor directory. Yep. So let's do it from here. No sessions. Okay. So let's remove this. Look at our sessions. Nope. All right. Maybe I'm just not going to be able to get to it. That's unfortunate. I can try to scan through this and look for some reason. Can I? No right click. Okay. It made some changes. Normal making changes kind of stuff. Did a grep, did a read, another patch. Patch. This is another patch, okay. Another one. Another one. Now we have it running rip grep, finding a bunch of things that match whatever it was looking for. Another rip grep, found more stuff. Run of get status, run get diff. Grep, grep, grep. Computes baseline and post-validation command exit codes. Another grep. And then its completion report. That's really frustrating. Do you still have the ability to communicate with previous developer sub-agents? Okay, good. I wonder how I can get the task ID. We want the task ID for the first developer sub-agent you launched, the one that first failed to commit its changes. Ask that developer why it didn't commit changes. I should have also told it to not launch a new subagent. That won't give us anything. That looks like it launched a new subagent. Oh no, that's the same agent. Great. Did you ever fail to commit your implemented changes in your run? If yes, explain exactly why no commit was made and at what point. If no explicitly confirmed commits were created, and list them briefly. No failure to commit in this run. I did create commit successfully on main. Okay, you're asking the wrong guy. That's the wrong one. Stop. Oh, wait a second. I did that in the wrong one. That's why. Here's where we are going to need it. Gets the task ID of the first developer sub agent, the one that first failed to commit its changes for the plan. Oh, not its changes. Yeah. Okay. Ask that sub agent why it didn't commit its changes. The heck? Okay, that does look like the right agent. You reported no commits. Why did you not create commits given developer subagents.md says to commit? Root cause was an instruction priority conflict, and I chose the stricter, higher level rule. Developer subagent says to commit frequently as a role guideline, but my execution policy in this environment says never commit unless the user explicitly asks for a commit. Okay, we need to find where that instruction comes from. Your task says make commits if your instructions require, otherwise report changed files and diffs. Your task text said make commits if your instructions require, otherwise report changed files and diffs, which I interpreted under that stricter policy as no explicit commit request. Your task text. So all the way up here, your task, implement the story using this story context. Implement all acceptance criteria from the story context using repository root canonical paths, ensure terminology, blah, blah, blah. Do not modify unrelated files. Make commits if your instructions require. Oh, man. Okay, well, that's not really something super fixable. Jeez. But I do want to find this. Oh, this is not the right tab. This one is. I have to go up. All right. Ask it to tell you the file path that contains the unknown. Okay, so something's going wrong here. Ask it to elaborate more about the context around its instructions to what does it mean, what section of the context is it in, etc. In the tool instruction block under committing changes with Git, it states never commit changes unless the user explicitly asks you to. It also appears in that same section again as a critical note. Related project guidance and developer subagent says commit frequently, but that does not override the explicit ask requirement. Operational meaning. I should not create any commit by default even after implementing code. I only commit when I point to a clear user instruction requesting commit behavior. Otherwise, I leave changes uncommitted. All right. So it seems maybe there was an update to OpenCode. And OpenCode may have added instructions. Committing changes with Git. Instruction block. Okay. Let's... Oh, wait a second. I did that back at the image to maze one. So this is completely untrustworthy. Wait a second. Is this one where it said unknown? No, this one is. Okay. So here's where I meant to paste that request. It clarified that the instruction came from runtime policy, not a repo file, developer tool policy, bash/commit guidance, and its runtime instructions. Okay. We may need to update our planning guidance so that when it produces plans, it specifically has instructions to commit for each individual story. And I suspect there may be a recent change in OpenCode that adds this guidance. In fact, let's go like this. There's the phrase. OpenCode here. Okay. Is there this string in the OpenCode code base? It'd probably be faster for me to... Oh man, it didn't actually copy it. There, that. Might be faster for me just to directly check myself rather than asking the agent, but we'll see. Not with that exact lowercase wording, but the codebase does contain the equivalent instruction in 3 files. Bash. Yep, there it is. Never commit changes unless the user explicitly asks you to. Find the commit that changed that line. Yeah, just do that. What I'm actually wanting is not, it's this one. Trinity, Quen, Bash, here we go, this one. 1225, that's pretty old. I should have had that in my context since I've been working on this, except very old versions. Oh, and that one changed it, but it seems like it still had the general context. I'm only concerned with the bash.txt one. The commit you found seems like it changed other stuff. Did it still say something similar before that? already had the same policy, just phrased differently. Okay. When was that committed? When was the prior version committed? (2025) 12/25 and 12/17. Now, it is definitely possible that much of what we were doing was on a commit before December, because I started working on this back in November. That's when I originally forked OpenCode and started my work on Context Bonsai. And then I took a break for a couple months and then came back to it. And only very recently we did this rebase stuff. So it's possible that that's what I'm seeing and why it's only been showing up recently. I'm concerned that the model thinks that bash tool command is stronger than the specific instructions we gave it. It should understand that the file we're feeding it is our explicit instruction, but it just doesn't. Okay. I think the way I want to handle this is to make sure that the developer guidelines are they say that you are a developer, you are explicitly being asked to create commits. I think that's how I'll do it, rather than putting commit steps in every single plan. Okay. For now, we need to go ahead and commit the current changes. And then once that's committed, we're going to mess with the developer subagents file. Okay, cool. Now I'd like to update that file so that it says, as a developer, you are explicitly being asked to create commits for the plan given. Maybe that wording is going to get it to overcome the don't commit instruction. We'll see. Okay. can't quite remember what we were doing in the first place before this. Untracked files still present. Okay, that's fine. Before doing this hunt for why the developer misbehaved, what was the task we were doing? You updated paths on a plan, then orchestrated a plan. What was that plan? Unify the baseline validation. Oh, right, baseline validation. Cool. All right. Oh, of course. And that's what I said over here in my little side quest thing. Okay. So I think that's all set now. Let's quit this. Go back to the image to maze thing. Before I got confused and I sent this the wrong stuff. It followed planning guidance and generated this plan. Oh, yeah, that was what we carried over to the other thing. But before that, oh, right. It completed a thing and it had errors and it said those errors previously existed when they didn't. Now we need a story for fixing any existing errors. Follow planning guidance.md to make a new plan for fixing any currently broken tests. Oh, and before it does too much there, I actually want to make sure that this is going to be using the new updated versions of the orchestration system that we just made. Okay, it just ran a Context Bonsai prune to get rid of stuff. Oh, it's trying to prune away what I just told it for some reason. That's really bad. Wait a second, is it? I could have sworn I just saw read the orchestrator.agent. Now we need a story for fixing any existing errors. That, yeah. Yeah, it included that as part of the two, unfortunately. I mean, it's not the worst in the world because this is going to be in its context since it's part of this tool call. But man, it should not have included its current instruction for what it's about to do. Summary: archived the completed browser UI epic orchestration sequence, blah blah blah. Also captured follow-up investigation to lint regression attribution, clarification of commit behavior from the developer sub-agent, and agreement to create a new plan for the currently broken tests. So it's running the tests to figure out what's currently broken. That's fine. So why I'm a little bit surprised about this prune call submission that it made is that the prune tool explicitly tells the LLM not to prune the things that it needs to be able to continue working. But what it pruned away was the exact instruction that it's supposed to continue working on. So that's concerning. And it didn't like reiterate it in the summary. That's another part of it is where it says if there is something that would be beneficial to prune away, but there's part of it that you still need to continue your work, you can just reiterate that part in the summary and then it will remain in the context while everything else is pruned. But it didn't reiterate the instructions that it has. It's pretty interesting. Okay, so creating a story plan for fixing broken test runner boundaries. Why is it using Python to do this? Wow. That's such a strange way to do this. rather than just writing text to a file using its normal write tool, it created a Python script to dump just a bunch of text into it. Here it defines a text variable with the 3 quote thing, and there's all this stuff that it's dumping into the file. It could have just used the write tool. It's so weird that it decided to do it that way. Oops, I just clicked into a subagent. I didn't mean to. Okay. Well, it is doing the launching subagents to validate the plan. That's a good thing. Now, what were we doing on the Context Bonsai side? Added the guardrails. So this failure mode is explicitly blocked. What guardrails? What did I just ask it to do? Update the meta plan. Oh, right. So it's updating the meta plan so that the developer subagent doesn't modify the meta plan. Instead, it should be very clear that it's creating a separate concrete plan. And it didn't rerun a validation loop to make sure the changes were fine. I think that's fine for now because we'll just directly test it. Wait, did you commit the changes? Commits the meta plan changes. Okay. Then let's try orchestrate the meta plan so we can see if the new instructions are better at avoiding the issue. Okay, let's see what happens. I kind of want to see what instructions it gave to the developer. Oh, there's a permission requirement. Go back up. What's it doing? Why is it looking there? How much context is used? 200,000 lines. I'm going to reject this. It's got this dialog so we can tell it what to do differently, but it's not letting me type in there, so I'm just going to hit enter. What is it doing? You're a developer subagent. Read and follow that. Oh no, it should not tell it to read and follow the orchestrator agent. Dude. Or planning guidance. It again did that thing where it asks for permissions from Git. Or Git launches a password dialog. Implement generation from metaplan. Yeah, why did it? So it tried to read this opcode directory for some reason, but none of its instructions are telling it to do that. That was a weird hallucination that it did. Well, it seems like it's going to continue doing the right stuff. Hmm. It looks like it's creating a plan. Yep, that's a plan, all right. Cool. And it's committing it. That's good. Okay, theoretically it did it. Let's go back to the parent agent, and now it's launching a reviewer. Good. How's this guy going? Um, okay, so the plan is theoretically for fixing tests. Current bun test failure caused by bun executing playwright.spec.ts files, hard runner boundaries, so bun and playwright test suites don't overlap. Locked decisions in the plan. Bun only runs a specific test file. That I don't want. Playwright runs only that specific test file. I also don't really want that. Remove silent pass behavior from the primary playwright script path. What? Add machine enforced guard. Validation loop status. Missing details. Check no blocking gaps. Ambiguity. Check no unresolved high impact ambiguity. I think this did things that I didn't ask for. Because this add machine enforced guard, I think, is like get commit hooks, maybe. Let's go see what this plan actually does. Maybe here, yeah. Oh, nope, not this directory. This one. Hook. Okay, nothing about a hook. That's good. You didn't really do what I asked. I think it probably pruned too much out of its context, and now it doesn't even remember that we launched a developer agent and it did a bunch of stuff and it just said tests failed, but they were previously existing. I don't think it remembers that. Orchestrated a plan, and during that, the developer agent identified tests and claimed they were already failing. Outcome. Developer produced a separate concrete artifact. Did not modify the meta plan. Okay, good. And it committed it. That's good. And okay. I want to see if our LLM conductor is correct here. I don't think it is, but oh, I know why. There. .llm conductor is not a symlink in this directory. So I think I want to rm.llm conductor and then -rf. And then ln-s home/project/llm conductor to here, llm conductor. There. Oh, that's a broken symlink. Where is it? What? Home Basil Projects LLM conductor. Oh, I misspelled it. All right. rm.llm conductor. Try again with that symlink. There. And then, there we go. That looks correct. Yep. Okay. So now the current directory is pointing to, is a symlink to the real LLM conductor. So now it should have the updates we made, but even without those updates, it still did the proper commit. So now let's test to see if our concrete plan works. Or just straight that. Cool, that's running. Back to the image to maze thing. It's doing some tests, writing what? I want it to stop. Stop all activity. I don't know what you're doing right now. We need an alignment step. I'm suspecting that it's trying to just fix everything on its own rather than come up with a plan to fix stuff. What's going on here? I need to find out what keeps doing that. Okay, let's one thing at a time. First, I was fixing the broken test runner boundary issue directly. You were not asked to fix it directly. You are never the direct implementer. Undo your local edits. Boop, boop, boom. Oh boy. I don't want it to clear out every single change. I just wanted to undo the things that it did. This is a little bit risky. Ooh. Okay, that's more specific. I also need to do sort of like a cleanup on this project. There's a whole bunch of untracked and uncommitted files. There's something that has happened in our process that has caused things to go off the rails, and I'm not sure quite what. Okay. Now, does this have the up arrow functionality? If I delete this. Up, up, up. Okay, good. We need a story for fixing the errors. You're supposed to use planning guidance.md to generate that story. You already tried once, but I don't remember what went wrong. Do we have the start of a story file for this? There's already a draft story file. Okay, good. And it was refined to implementation ready. Runner boundary contracts launched and validation loop cleared. What happened that caused things to go off track? What did happen here? I don't really remember. Before this. I said it didn't really do what I told it. Oh, what I meant is your story was wrong. It's not doing the thing I asked for. Specifically, I didn't ask for E2E versus other tests to be separated. I don't know why you did that. The entire point is to figure out what tests are currently broken, make a plan to fix the currently broken tests. Okay, well, it's running bun test. That's a good first step, but the last time it went on to go and make its own changes, which I did not want. The OpenCode rebase thing is still doing its stuff. The developer finished, and now the reviewer is doing stuff. It's about to execute another command, and I'm not really sure what that command would be. Sure is thinking about it for a while, though. Here we go. What did we do? It did another thing where it creates a command to write the file instead of just writing the file. That's so strange. But it did create a plan. Let's just review it here and see what it says. Fix the tests that are currently failing, using evidence from current test runs and without reward hacking. Cool. Maintain, okay, sure. Yep, ambiguities from the user model, whether failures should be fixed by code test logic changes, runner config changes, or both. Resolve default, choose the smallest root cause fix set after baseline triage. Do not pre-commit to a specific mechanism. Playwright test did not expect test to be called here. Baseline command and output captured on current main before implementation. Mm-hmm. Okay, this looks like a better plan than the first one. Still going through its validation loop. I think I am going to ask it why it keeps using this method to write files. Why are you using the bash tool to execute Python to write your file instead of using the write tool directly? But I want to ask that after it's fully completed creating the plan. Oops. Something's going wrong with this rebase. It needed a revision. So we are going to have to reanalyze what went on here and see if there's something wrong with our meta plan or with the concrete plan, see if there was some sort of ambiguity, or with the validation steps. We have to figure out why this needed a revision. Actually, I can go here. Oh no, this is the one that doesn't let me click into the subagents. How about there? And then to the left, that's the developer. No, left, this is the reviewer. And it said fail because traceability notes are out of sync with the final story code state. Lists only 2 replay commits, but the reviewed implementation also includes a third schema alignment fix, which changes runtime code. Kind of a similar thing we already faced before, and that theoretically the plan had a way to work around that. Maybe it's okay. Okay. So it did the plan, it created a new plan. Okay. Now let's find out why it used the bash tool instead of the write tool. No satisfactory explanation. Okay, well, fine. Then orchestrate that. Okay, looks like that's going to happen correctly. Ooh. Wait a second, what? Did I go to the right? Okay, there we go. It's doing another revision for some reason. Why? Let's see. Control X down. Address only the judge approved items. There it goes again with this GitHub password dialog. I need to figure out what's going on there. Hmm. Okay, I think I'll go ahead and end this session for now. I'm going to keep poking these along in the background because I want to start working on other projects and just let these go on slowly. I'll just bring them up and poke them as they go on, so that way I can do other stuff instead of just wait for these to respond. So yeah, I'll continue again tomorrow. We'll pick up where we left off on both parts of this. I'm hoping that this rebase thing is actually working correctly, but I am not completely confident. We may need to go through another loop of figuring out where things went off the rails and fixing the metadata plan, and then redoing this whole rebase cycle and seeing if it does the right thing the next time around. And on the image to maze project, hopefully by the end of this, we're going to have a clean test environment, and hopefully its fixes don't reward hack and just like delete the tests or add some trivial workaround to make the test pass and not actually pass the spirit of the test. We'll see what happens there. But I want the image to maze project to have a solid foundation for launching the next set of work, which is going to be iterating on the GUI that lets us tweak the settings for this maze so that we can hopefully get it to more closely resemble the input image instead of be very quite abstract and like barely recognizable as what the image looks like. So that's what we'll pick up next time. Thanks for joining me.